What are the odds of winning a race in your third career start while filling the seat of a legend who died 3 weeks earlier? What are the chances of surviving a crash that sends you airborne into a catch fence at Talladega? These moments shouldn't exist. The math says they're impossible, but they happened anyway. These are NASCAR's true 1 in a million moments. Number 10. Carl Edwards' 2009 Talladega airborne crash. Let's kick things off with a crash that had fans asking one question: how did he survive that? Carl Edwards was having the race of his life at the 2009 Aaron's 499 at Talladega, leading the pack toward the Tri-Oval. Victory was right there. But here's where things went sideways. Literally. Edwards turned down into Brad Keselowski's path. The number 99 Ford spun backwards at nearly 200 miles per hour. Then Edwards went airborne. Ryan Newman hit him mid-flight, destroying Newman's hood and propelling Edwards even higher. The car flipped airborne directly onto the catch fence on the front stretch. 8 fans were injured. But here's the absolutely insane part. Edwards climbed out of the wreckage completely unharmed. And then this guy did something nobody expected. He sprinted on foot across the finish line to the roar of the crowd. Fox commentator Mike Joy captured the moment perfectly, shouting, "Shades of Ricky Bobby."
Standing ovation from the crowd. Shades of Ricky Bobby.
A reference to the Will Ferrell movie Talladega Nights, where the character does the exact same thing. When Edwards appeared on Larry King Live after the crash, he admitted he's a Will Ferrell fan and that the movie finish was exactly what came to mind. Despite crossing the finish line on foot, NASCAR handed him a DNF. He didn't officially finish the race, even though he technically crossed the finish line first, just not in a car. Number 9. Pass in the Grass, Dale Earnhardt 1987 All-Star Race. Now here's a moment that earned a legendary nickname, even though the thing people think happened never actually happened. The 1987 Winston All-Star Race, Dale Earnhardt versus Bill Elliott. 20 drivers competing for $200,000. With a few laps remaining and $200,000 on the line, Elliott moved inside to pass Earnhardt. Earnhardt went left to block. Contact shoved Earnhardt fully into the tri-oval grass at the start-finish line. At that speed in those cars, losing control in the wet grass should have meant game over, but Earnhardt held it straight. He returned to the asphalt still leading. The crowd went absolutely wild. Elliott's tire got caught a few laps later from the contact and Earnhardt cruised to victory. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. It wasn't actually a pass. Despite what everyone calls it, Earnhardt never passed anyone while in the grass. He maintained his lead, that's it. And honestly, the moment was spectacular enough that it didn't matter. The car control, the drama, the stakes, all of it cemented Earnhardt's reputation as the Intimidator and became one of NASCAR's most iconic moments, pass or no pass. Number 8. Ricky Craven versus Kurt Busch photo finish, 2003 Darlington. Sometimes races are decided by tenths of a second, sometimes by hundredths. And then there's this finish. The 2003 Carolina Dodge Dealers 400 at Darlington came down to 2 drivers, Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch. With 10 laps remaining, Busch's power steering failed, but Busch refused to give up. Craven caught him on lap 291 and tried to pass. Busch threw a blocking move popularized by Dale Earnhardt. Busch used his front bumper in a bump and run to regain the lead. Going into the final lap, Busch had a 0.4 of a second advantage. Craven followed him through turns 1 and 2, waiting for his moment. Between turns 3 and 4, Busch spun his tires slightly and couldn't steer to block. Craven drew alongside at the exit of turn 4. Both drivers got loose. Both stayed on the throttle. They slammed into each other multiple times in the final 300 yards, smoke pouring from their tires. The margin of victory? 0.002 seconds. At the time, it was the closest finish in NASCAR Cup Series history since electronic scoring began in 1993. Craven didn't even know he'd won. After crossing the finish line, he asked his crew over the radio who got the checkered flag. He glanced at the scoring pylon halfway around the track and finally learned he'd succeeded. Number 7. Tony Stewart's final career win, Sonoma 2016. Tony Stewart's 2016 season started with disaster and ended with one of the sport's most emotional victories. In January, Stewart injured his back riding a dune buggy near San Diego. 4 days later, his team announced he'd suffered a burst fracture in his lumbar vertebrae. He couldn't compete in the Daytona 500. Stewart missed the first 8 races of the season. When he returned in April at Richmond, he finished 19th. This was supposed to be his final season before retirement, and it was slipping away. But NASCAR granted Stewart a waiver. If he could win a race and finish in the top 30 in standings by the autumn Richmond race, he'd qualify for the 2016 chase. At Talladega, doctors advised Stewart not to drive the entire race to avoid further injury. Then came Sonoma. A late caution gave Stewart the opportunity he needed. He led the final 20 laps and made a last-lap pass on Denny Hamlin, who wheel-hopped in the final turn and hit the wall after Stewart slipped inside. Stewart's first win in 3 years. The win vaulted Stewart from 34th to 31st in the standings, just 9 points outside the top 30. He eventually climbed to 20th in points and made the chase for the first time since 2012. That win at Sonoma became Stewart's final career victory. Number 6. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Daytona win, 2001 Pepsi 400. Some victories transcend racing. This was one of them. Dale Earnhardt Sr. died at Daytona in the 2001 Daytona 500. His son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., had finished second in that race, watching helplessly as his father's number 3 car slammed into the wall on the final lap. For weeks afterward, Jr. struggled. Then came the return to Daytona for the Pepsi 400 in July, the same track that had taken his father just 5 months earlier. Rolling off 13th, Jr. charged forward immediately. By lap 27, he'd taken the lead. Under that year's restrictor plate package, no lead was safe. But on the night of July 7, Jr. dominated, leading 116 of 160 laps. He held off teammate Michael Waltrip by 0.123 seconds at the checkered flag. In victory lane, Jr. climbed onto his car's roof and embraced Waltrip, who hadn't been able to celebrate his Daytona 500 win in February because of Dale Sr.'s death. Number 5. 1979 Daytona 500, the fight that made NASCAR famous. This is the moment NASCAR became a national sport, and it involved a fistfight on live television. The 1979 Daytona 500 was the first 500-mile race broadcast flag to flag on national television. A snowstorm had blanketed much of the eastern United States, keeping millions of viewers home and glued to their TVs. Perfect timing for chaos. On the final lap, race leaders Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison collided on the back stretch. The cars made contact 4 times before locking together and crashing into the outside wall in turn 3. Both cars slid down into the infield grass, their races over. Richard Petty, over a half a lap behind when the crash happened, cruised to his 6th Daytona 500 victory. But that's not what anyone remembers. After the wrecked cars stopped in the infield, Yarborough and Donnie Allison began arguing. Donnie's brother Bobby, who was 1 lap down, stopped to offer Donnie a ride back. Yarborough blamed Bobby for his defeat and struck him in the face with his helmet while Bobby sat in his car. Bobby jumped out and punched Yarborough in the mouth. A full brawl erupted. Yarborough knocked Bobby to the ground and hit him twice with his helmet. Donnie grabbed Yarborough from behind, yelling, "You want to fight? I'm the cat you should be fighting with." Bobby jumped in, grabbed Yarborough by the collar, and threw punches while Donnie swung his helmet. Track officials finally separated all 3 drivers after a 16-second melee. Television cameras captured most of it live in front of 17 million viewers. The story made the front page of the New York Times sports section. NASCAR had arrived as a national sport. shedding its moonshine running roots and expanding beyond its southeastern base. All 3 drivers were fined $6,000 and placed on probation, but the damage, or rather the publicity, was already done. Number 4. Bill Elliott's 212.809 mile-per-hour speed record, 1987 Talladega. Some records are made to be broken. This one was made to stand forever. At the 1987 Winston 500 at Talladega, Bill Elliott sat on the pole with a qualifying speed that defied belief, 212.809 miles per hour. Earlier that year at Daytona, Elliott had set a NASCAR speed record of 210.364 miles per hour. He broke his own 1986 record of 209.383 miles per hour. But Talladega was different, faster, more dangerous. The speed was so extreme, so far beyond what NASCAR considered safe, that the sanctioning body knew something had to change. During that same race, Bobby Allison spun and went airborne into the catch fence, tearing away a large section and injuring several fans. NASCAR's response was immediate. Restrictor plates would be mandatory at Daytona and Talladega starting in 1988. The plates choked airflow to the engines, reducing horsepower and top speed. Safety improved. But speed records became impossible. Elliott's 212.809 mile-per-hour qualifying lap at Talladega remains the fastest in NASCAR history. No driver has come close in over 35 years. And with restrictor plates now replaced by tapered spacers that serve the same purpose, no driver ever will. Number 3. 1992 Hooters 500, the greatest race ever run. 3 stories, 1 race. Absolute perfection. The 1992 Hooters 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway is widely considered the greatest NASCAR race of all time. And for good reason. Richard Petty's farewell, Jeff Gordon's debut, and a championship battle with 6 drivers mathematically eligible to win the title. Petty, the 7-time champion with 200 career wins, was making his 1,184th and final start. He'd lingered 8 years past his last victory in 1984, carrying a 240-race losing streak into his final ride. Gordon, the 21-year-old phenom, was making his first Cup Series start. And the championship? Alan Kulwicki, Bill Elliott, Davey Allison, Kyle Petty, Mark Martin, and Harry Gant all had a mathematical shot at the title. Petty started 39th, wrecked early, went to the garage, and returned near the end to avoid a DNF. He finished his career at half speed on the cool-down lap, waving to fans. Gordon started 21st, crashed at exactly halfway, and finished 31st. Nobody noticed. But the championship battle was electric. Elliott won the race, Kulwicki finished second. And because Kulwicki led 1 more lap than Elliott, he secured 5 bonus points for leading the most laps. That 5-point bonus gave Kulwicki a 10-point championship victory over Elliott. 10 points. After 29 races and thousands of laps, the championship came down to who led the most laps in the final race. The 1992 Hooters 500 was a cultural moment, the end of one era, the beginning of another, and a championship decided by one of the narrowest of margins. Number 2. Dale Earnhardt's final lap, 2001 Daytona 500. February 18, 2001, the day NASCAR lost its greatest driver. Dale Earnhardt was running 7th on lap 173 of the Daytona 500. His 2 teammates, Michael Waltrip in the number 15 and Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the number 8, were running 1st and 2nd ahead of him. Earnhardt was doing what he did best, playing blocker, protecting his teammates' positions, preventing Sterling Marlin and others from challenging for the lead. On the final lap, Waltrip and Earnhardt Jr. battled for the win. Behind them, Earnhardt blocked Marlin's attempts to pass. In turn 4 of the final lap, Earnhardt made light contact with Marlin and slid off course. When he turned back onto the track, he crossed in front of Ken Schrader. Contact. Earnhardt's car dragged Schrader up the track and then slammed head-on into the retaining wall. The impact speed between 155 and 160 miles per hour. The angle 55 to 59 degrees. Enough force to break the right rear wheel assembly off the car. Both cars slid into the infield. Schrader climbed out uninjured and ran to Earnhardt's car. He pulled down the window net and frantically signaled for paramedics. What Schrader saw, he wouldn't fully describe for 10 years. When I went up to the car, I knew he was dead. Waltrip won the race. Earnhardt Jr. finished the race. Earnhardt was pronounced dead at Halifax Medical Center at 5:16 p.m. The cause? A basilar skull fracture. He died instantly on impact. Earnhardt was the fourth NASCAR driver killed by a basilar skull fracture in 8 months, following Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper. His death, broadcast live to over 17 million viewers, shocked the racing world and triggered massive safety reforms. Since Earnhardt's death, no driver has died during competition in NASCAR's 3 major series. Number 1. Kevin Harvick's win in Earnhardt's car, Atlanta 2001. 3 weeks after Dale Earnhardt's death, NASCAR returned to racing, and the sport needed a miracle. Richard Childress had planned to develop Kevin Harvick slowly. However, Earnhardt's death changed everything. Harvick was thrust into the number 29 GM Goodwrench Chevrolet, Earnhardt's seat, renumbered out of respect, for the first full-time Cup season. Pressure was unimaginable. 25 years old, replacing the greatest driver in NASCAR history. On March 11, 2001, at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Harvick found himself battling Jeff Gordon for the win in just his 3rd career start. The finish was impossibly close. Harvick edged Gordon by 6/1000th of a second, 0.006 seconds, roughly the width of a human hair at race speed. Harvick won. After taking the checkered flag, he drove backward on the track with 3 fingers held outside the driver's window, a tribute to Earnhardt's number 3. It was the kind of moment that only happens once. A 1 in a million victory that gave NASCAR hope when the sport needed it most. Which of these 1 in a million moments shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Track Reactions, your source for all the stories on and off the track.